What's the creepiest thing you've heard someone at your job say? More unsettling than creepy, to be honest. I was checking the voicemail at the dialysis clinic when I opened one morning, because sometimes our patients will leave us a message the night before, if they know they're going to be late, or mistreatment. Sweet elderly patient had left a message that said, "I'm sorry ladies, I won't make it tomorrow morning. I'm going to see Hazel." Hazel was his wife, who passed away 4 years earlier. I immediately called house. No answer. Called his son, that was listed as an emergency contact, and he tells me, he was just about to call us, to let us know his father passed away in the night. His dad had gotten all of his paperwork with his will out of his safe, watered the house plants, put money for each of his utility payments in labeled envelopes, put on his best suit, shined his dress shoes, left a message for us at the clinic, left a message for his choir director, letting him know he wouldn't need a ride to practice in 2 days, then he sat down in his recliner, and died. As far as I know, and according to his family, he didn't do, or take anything, to expedite his exit, he just went to sleep in that recliner. When I worked at Ford, there was a dude that walked around, showing other co-workers videos of him, effing other women. On my first day, he also kept saying, if we both had life in prison, I'd butt F you. Then kept desperately trying to explain how that's somehow not gay. Dude was weird. Had a supervisor at UPS, showing me a video of him effing a girl, while rapping along to his music, that was playing in the background of said video. Was a bit weird, when you're tired as F at 12:30 at night, after working in 100+ heat for 6 hours, and just want a quarter pounder and sleep. Make the kid in the corner shut up. Old lady at 3 a.m., as she points to the empty corner. There was no kid. She passed not long after. Honestly, this kind of thing happens a lot. You start seeing ghosts. I'm putting the crash cart in front of your door. That's effed up. I guess you work in a hospital? You have more stories like this? Yup, I have more than one should have for a lifetime. It really weirds me out, but the brain does crazy things when it's healing, or dying. Can't imagine how horrible it is for the patient. Open casket funeral, family gathered, and someone seemed out of sorts. She was dressed casually, and just kind of meandering about. I observed her for a while. She made her way to the casket, and appeared to be giving the deceased some reverence. She then had to pass by me to leave, and she was clearly inebriated, and said to me, as she was leaving, "I just wanted to see a dead body." Gave me the drunk girl grin, and staggered off. She just staggered into a funeral off the street. Who does that? Funeral director. This reminds me of a time my grandpa took me and my younger brother to a funeral home. I don't recall why we were there, but I assume to pick out something for his deceased family. I was maybe 10. There was a viewing of a teenage girl while we were there, so he had us go up and see her. I remember asking him why she had no hair, and he explained she probably died of cancer. It was a learning moment, but I didn't think anything of it at the time. Now I cringe every time, because her family was right there, while my grandpa explained why a young lady was in the casket. So sad, and heartbreaking. When I was 7, I asked a lesbian at a funeral if she thought my mom was pretty. I had just learned what a lesbian was, and I knew my mom was a beauty pageant winner when she was younger, so I just had to know. She said yes, my mom was pretty. My parents were mortified. I wake up and think about this every once in a while. I worked at a grocery store when I was 18. My dad had just died suddenly, and it was my first day back at work after the funeral. This weird guy, coworker, would always go out of his way to talk to me. I was in charge of self-checkout. So, he's like, "I heard your dad died." I said, "Yeah." Then he tells me this sick story about how he used to work at a funeral home and would put the dead bodies in sexual positions. I walked away and told my supervisor that it was inappropriate. I don't know. Disturbing. ETA, I feel like I should mention the fact that the manager decided I talked too much prior to this conversation with coworker, so I was essentially banned from talking with my coworkers, but this dude would make a point of always coming over to where I was just to say stupid shit to me. What did your supervisor say? Did they give you permission to kick him in the balls? Right? I think he got written up and yelled at. To be fair, no one liked this guy. It's just weird, 'cause this scenario popped into my head the other day randomly, and I'm like, WTF. Here is mine. Working on an ambulance 5150 call. Everything is going well, till he starts talking to himself. I ask him about a cool demon tattoo. He says that the demon is the one he is talking to. He wants me to kill you before we get to the hospital. But I keep telling him that you seem like a good guy, just wanting to help people, and he still wants me to kill you. I worked as a lifeguard when I was a teenager. One of my coworkers said, verbatim, the term rape gets thrown around way too much. If a girl gets drunk at a party and passes out, and some guy F her, that's her fault. Never spoke to him again after that. I told a manager I'd forgotten to do something, and he sent me a reply saying, "That's okay, because you're going to repay me by?" Wink emoji. He's a 55-year-old man, and I'm 25. If you haven't reported him yet, document what he said, and anything else creepy, so you have evidence. Someone else has reported him. It was on Teams, so PSD can look at the chats. Directed towards me, one of our guys on his smoke break said, "You don't look like you run fast." In the moment I laughed, but as soon as I stepped inside our building, I had the biggest WTF moment of the year. He was a lean dude, teeth missing, the rest orange and brown. With clothes on that a dude with a machete would be wearing in a horror movie. I hadn't even been there 2 weeks. He was a cool guy. For the rest of the interactions I've had with him, never chased me. He just had weird sense of humor. "I got your number out of the Rolodex, I'm gonna text you later." Assistant manager at my first fast food job, when I was 14. "Hey, I remember you said your favorite ice cream was half-baked. I'm in your driveway with 2 spoons. I pulled your address and phone number from the system." Older guy I worked with at the IRS. "Wanna know why I only hire tiny girls under 21? They're easier to convince to get in my truck." Franchise owner at a Little Caesars. "Look in the cup with my name on it in the souvenir section. There's a present for you." Middle-aged manager at a surf shop on the beach when I was 16. It was a thong, perfume, and a pack of condoms. I'm a teacher that works at the school that I went to. I've ran into a few creeps at other schools and reported who I've needed to. Students, please talk to trusted adults and we'll get things done. But the creepiest one I've heard came from the creep's own mouth, and was from a teacher that started when I was a junior. I was talking to him in the hallway. He was a liked teacher when I went there, and was still there when I came back. I brought up the valedictorian from my class. Him, yeah, she was nice. None of you knew I was even with her back then. Me, what? Him, oh yeah. She was a cutie patootie. Much hotter than the senior girls today. I reported that shit faster than a gunslinger. Would you believe that one of the senior girls immediately came forward? Effer probably doesn't like prison. Good. And I can't hear cutie patootie without feeling nauseous anymore. Manager commented on my daughter's friend's ass. She was 15 at the time. He also talked about how he could tell which women want to be raped. I was a woman working in automotive, and it was so fun trying to explain to the guys there why more women don't work in automotive, as they treat us like we have to put up with their shit or just leave. And I left. Same thing in aviation. I don't think they realize it's hard for us to make a change in these industries. For this place, I couldn't report because I'd just be reporting to more men, and they would know it was me who did it. They also would rather lose employees to keep their management, and if I said anything, they made it out like a women versus men thing, instead of just basic integrity. First day at a new job, I could stab you right now, and nobody would find your body until the end of the day. All of this while stabbing his work cart with a screwdriver. Dude got passed up for a promotion and was asked to train the new guy in the same conversation with the boss. He didn't get any better over the years I worked with him. He ended up getting fired for comments like this. This customer always flirted with me and always gave me gifts or money, but what really threw me off was him telling me about his new job, where he'd be making $100 an hour overseas for a few months, and said when he gets back, he'll have enough money to buy me. Worked in a donut shop where we also made custom cakes. Guy calls in asking for a custom cake. I ask him the standard questions: what size would you like? Would you like it to be any particular color, etc. He says, 9 inches and black, and then starts graphically detailing a sex scene, and I quickly realized, he was not talking about a cake. Was training a new guy. We were driving by middle school, and he says, "Man, the way these girls dress these days, makes it so tempting." I'm like, you mean young adult women, right? Trying to see, if I misheard him, or something, and that he wasn't implying rape, and of teenage children. He didn't help his case, by saying, that girls in his day, didn't dress like that to school. I told my boss, but since it was as he said, they just agreed to not put him with me anymore, since he made me uncomfortable. He ended up creeping everyone out, but they let him go, due to not being able to perform the required tasks in a timely manner. Now, he's a school bus driver. I had a customer come in and ask what the youngest age was for someone to work there. My boss said that the minimum age requirement was 16. The guy then asked whether or not it mattered if they looked mature enough, or that they could pass for 16. My boss said, no. He mentioned his granddaughter was 12, but could pass for being older. He smirked after, as if to receive approval and agreement from us, about his granddaughter. My co-workers and I, all exchanged faces of disgust and horror, after he left. Can I say, nothing? Had a customer come up, and proceed to pay for an ice cream. He never said a thing, and then I looked up, and there was a gun in my face. He just nodded to the other cash register, and quietly ran out, once he got the money. I had PTSD for a while. After that, anyone who acted off, and didn't say anything, triggered the shakes in me. Paramedic. Had a call, years back, to a nursing home, unknown medical. We arrived, and none of the staff knew who called, not unusual. We checked the rooms, located a juvenile male, sitting in a room, with an elderly sleeping female. He stated, quite calmly, "I was going to kill her, the woman, but I called you, because you're better." Caught us off guard, in a major way. Throughout the whole process, he was extremely calm, cooperative, and polite. Serious psychological issues, recognized the thoughts weren't good, and knew 911 was better, to assure, he got help. He wasn't a visitor. Staff didn't know how he got in, or when, but it wasn't a locked unit, so, he likely, just walked in without anyone noticing, or caring. When I was an apprentice, a man walked into the shop, asking for a tattoo of something on his upper thigh. He kept staring at me, while talking to the artist. He ended up going on this whole thing, about how he needed the tattoo, because he was being sent to jail soon, for sexually touching a kid, and wanted to get a tattoo on his upper thigh, so he can say, he never touched her, because she couldn't say he had a tattoo. He left, and we reported him to the police. The next day, they came down to take a statement from everyone that was present. What's wrong, baby girl? The booth just needed fixed. As he had me pinned against the booth, and I had now screamed for help. My customers from upstairs, and in the theater adjacent from me, came running out. Backstory, used to work for a porn store, who also had booths, and a theater. One day, a guy tried to lure me, and pin me, once I realized he was lying. He was twice my size. It was the scariest moment I had there. Sitting on the launch truck, during a pilot's final flight, and his family came out to watch him land, and taxi in. His wife had their baby sitting off to the side, with ear defenders on. There was an airman on the truck, trying to be funny, and said, it would be hilarious, if that baby got sucked into the intake. I lost my shit on that kid. Pretty sure, that was the only time I ever yelled at anyone out of anger in the Air Force, during my 20+ years in. An extensive love letter was written by a co-worker addressed to me. A particular line of interest was, "I want to die together with you." This came from a girl who sexually assaulted me, and followed me home after work one night, which made it all the more terrifying. She was the daughter of the head of HR though, so, she saw no repercussions. I did, however, get written up for unprofessional conduct, after yelling at her, when she grabbed my crotch, one too many times. Had to call the police on her a few times, to get her to lay off, and thankfully, I don't work there anymore. I'm not a bad person. Just let me show you, yelled the twitchy guy, who tried to shut the door, to my leasing agent's office. The 4 guys who reopened that door, a split second later, let him know, we didn't believe him. The background check, after his rental application, that found 28 convictions for sex crimes, and the current pending charges, said, that he was not a nice guy at all. Scared the crap out of all of us, and creeped us out, especially when we realized he was one of more than 30 registered sex offenders living in a 3-block radius. I was an auto tech at a dealership, and I was in the service advisor booth, talking to one of the writers. A car pulled in, and the woman happened to be yawning. Suddenly, I heard, "That's right, open your mouth wide. I've got something to fill it." I looked at the writer, and said, "Do you realize that is my wife?" I've never seen a 6 feet 2 inches guy shrink so fast in my life. All he did the rest of the day was apologize every time I saw him. Working a slow shift at a restaurant, so the other servers and I were watching some celeb news show. They had a segment about Sandra Bullock, and how she worked at an ice cream shop as a teen, and that she was robbed at gunpoint by someone who was never caught. Another server, who was the golden boy, was marveling, and said, "Damn, what if you were the guy who got to say he robbed Sandra Bullock at gunpoint?" Everyone just looked at him in shock, to which he responded, "I'll bet he regrets that he didn't make her take off her clothes." I worked as a patient care technician in a hospital, and I was giving a bath to an aphasiac patient, totally coherent, but can't speak due to a stroke, some 10 years back. My bat got caught in her hair as I leaned over her. She all of a sudden said, "Ow." This woman hasn't spoken since her stroke, so we were both very surprised. I looked at her with my mouth open, dumb in astonishment. She was just as shocked, but she knew the message she wanted to get out. "I want to die," she said quickly, like she's been wanting to say it for a long time. She looked directly into my eyes. "What?" I asked idiotically. "Let me die," she repeated as clear as the first time. "What do you mean?" I asked. There was a long pause, and I saw her face shift to a disappointed frown. She wasn't going to speak again. I told the nurse and charge nurse. Then I got busy, and soon my shift was over. I came back the next day, and her room was filled with flowers, feel-better balloons, and a bunch of family. Her husband was sitting on her bed, flipping through a photo album, and showing pictures of when they were young to the family. I could tell by her face how angry she was. She would not look at them. And I realized that the husband and this family have medical power of attorney over her, so they decide if she lives or not. And they won't listen to her. I look around the room, her IV, her feeding tube, her oxygen. All there to help her live, because they want her to. She's done, but they won't let her go. And she's trapped inside her head, wanting to rest, and be done with the hospital, be done with her long suffering. Totally coherent, but unable to decide anything for herself, because we can't hear her. I think of that often, and it's a nightmare scenario for me. So scary. I worked at a small retail store, with someone I knew for many years through school. They were a part of my friend group, and we hung out all the time. Went bowling, to dinner, to parties at friends' houses. This person was always very kind, a bit shy, and hilarious, when you got to know them. One day after work, while we were both waiting for our rides as the sun was going down and it was getting dark, they started explaining to me how they believed in aliens. They said that they know they sound crazy, but they know aliens are real. I asked them what made them believe so fiercely. I knew they did psychedelics and such, but wanted to know why they were so adamant. They explained that they had weekly meetings in the forest with the aliens. The aliens would shine a light down on them, and bring them up to test them, and do drugs with them. They would be up with the aliens all night, and then come back to Earth, and pretend it never happened. Even stranger, they claimed, their mom also would join them up there, and the aliens didn't speak their language, but they implanted them both with a neurological chip, so they could communicate. They also mentioned that the aliens were kind creatures, but they would take over when the time was right. This wasn't the creepiest part to me. The creepiest part to me was the darkness in their eyes, when they started explaining, as if they were transported there, and were explaining it from memory. Like it was real. This person 100% believed what they were stating. I played along, as I was feeling a bit scared. I was only 19 at the time, telling them anything was possible, and it sounded like a very interesting experience that they had. After I said that, the light returned to their eyes, and they said, "I really appreciate you listening to me. No one usually does, with this kind of stuff." Around a month later, they were arrested for attacking their partner, and their partner's mother, with a hammer, and almost killing them in their apartment, because voices told them they had to. Turns out, my longtime friend had paranoid schizophrenia, and was completely undiagnosed and untreated. Due to the slow mental health system here, it wasn't caught or treated, before the incident occurred, but police did see that there was some sort of mental break happening, and got them help. It was so out of character for them to be violent. At first I didn't believe it. I still have trouble wrapping my mind around it now in my 30s. I still feel bad that I didn't tell anyone at the time. I just thought they were high, or fried, from the drugs. I always thought they were a bit odd, but harmless. I always wonder if I could have stopped the incident from happening, or helped my friend, before it went that far. I also wonder if I could have been that victim, if I had tried to help. I saw them again about a year later, and they were a shell of themselves, clearly heavily medicated. I think about them often. My first job when I was in high school. Worked as a clerk for a dry cleaners, and it was some 60 to 80-year-old woman that had a horrible attitude every time she came in. This day she said she liked my facial hair. Had that been all, I'd have been fine with it. But the tone in which she said it, and the look in her eye, as well as the smile she gave me when she did this, made my skin crawl. I went home and shaved it off after work. When I was 22, I was working in a bar and had tables to take care of, too. Guy before he left, grabbed my arm, after many drinks, gave me $100 tip, said, "I would love to drink your bath water, and would be honored if I choked on it." Worked at a culinary school a few years later, and a co-worker in a different part of the school said, "Your eyes are so beautiful, I want to rip them out and store them in a mason jar on my desk to look at when I'm feeling down." Those were probably the oddest and creepiest ones from work. Lots of stories about men approaching me with creepy things outside of work, too. After college, I worked in the tech services at a big box computer store, not far from LSU's campus. The first thing IT did, when you brought in your computer for service, was look for your personal porn stash. Before anything they were looking for and copying your porn. Photos of your wife on vacation? They had those. You're snapping photos through your neighbor's open window? They had those too. One time, they commented that one guy was apparently taking the clothes off of passed out drunk girls at parties. There was photos and video. The 3 guys in the department and their boss deemed it extremely hot. That was my last day there. I had a patient tell me, in graphic detail, about how they attempted to sexually assault my coworker, who was on night shift, the previous night. He had cornered her in a small med room, but she was able to get out luckily. The detail which he went into, the tone, and the way he spoke, just made every fiber of my being stand on edge. He said he was going to do it again that night, and they were meant to be together. He would take them both away the next night. Lots of details I don't want to repeat. Everything he told me, he was not joking in any way. Management hadn't done a single thing about the attempted assault the previous night, and he was in my care that day. Spoke with his attending, and got him to the right care floor he needed. Our med and cardiac wasn't the right spot for that. I strongly feel that if I hadn't, he would have raped her, or worse. I've never felt that way before. I imagine that is our innate primal fear. My whole body was just screaming with anxiety, danger warnings going off. I'll never forget the way he made me feel when he spoke about it. I'm just happy he wasn't able to hurt anyone. Not at the job, but after I quit, one of my managers, both male, made it a point to let me know I was originally hired because the managers wanted eye candy while at work. But they were pleasantly surprised by me, and that's why they tried so hard to keep me and not lose me to another restaurant. I was 19 in the mid-1990s, and got a job on a golf course. I was married at the time. The first week on the job, the manager who hired me picked me up in the golf cart and proceeded to drive around the course while telling me he was looking for a girlfriend. The other men I worked with told me the manager had hired me because he wanted a girlfriend. The manager would stop my work frequently for rides in the golf cart and started putting his hand on my thigh. He hired another girl and started to do the same shit with her. She was single. She went to HR, who called me in about the manager. I was asked if he was sexually harassing me and being inappropriate. He was immediately fired. On his way out, in his vehicle, he stopped by where I was working at and apologized. Said he didn't mean any of it.